Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the second event in our online conference series. It's great to see so many of you here for today's session, which is all about integrating outdoor learning. This is a showcase event today where we have 3 educators who will be sharing their experiences of embedding outdoor learning into a range of settings. Our first speaker will be Susan Cook, who is an experienced leader with over 20 years in education. Her work in outdoor play was recognised nationally with the Platinum Opal Play Award in 2024. Next, we'll hear from Paul Brennan-Foster, who is BGU's primary PGCE cohort lead with over 2 decades of experience as a foundation stage teacher and leader. Paul brings rich insight into forest school approaches, and his recent research focuses on the impact of children's mental health and well-being. Our final speaker is David Gibbons, who has experience working with a wide range of organisations. He is head teacher at Netlham COV Junior School with more than 26 years of leadership experience. Our speakers today each bring a unique perspective on how outdoor learning environments can enrich teaching and learning. Before we start, if you have any questions during the sessions, please use the Q&A tool at the top of the conversation. After each speaker, if we have time, I'll come back in and ask a few questions. So, I'm delighted to now hand over to our first speaker, Susan Cook.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Susan Cook. I'm the acting head teacher at Kidgate, but I also very passionate about Opal Play, which is outdoor play and learning. It's an award-winning mentor-supported school improvement plan, and it can completely transform your school and the culture of play in schools. It's not just about letting children blow off steam. Opal recognises that it's fundamental to their development, to their mental health, to their well-being, and even their academic progress. And Opal provides a strategic whole school approach to the quality of play, which is rooted in research and best practice. Now, why does play matter? Think about when you were little, or when your parents were little, or your grandparents were little, and how we used to go out to play on our bikes in the street until the street lights went on, and that was our time to come home. We used to go out, build dens, we used to climb trees, play with tyres, cardboard boxes, etc. But we don't do that anymore. Why don't we do that? Because we've got rising screen time, tighter schedules, and the shrinking of freedom. And what Opal Play and many schools think that play is under threat. And Opal Play actually takes the steps to change that and gives children the freedom to play within the playground. Now, did you know that 20% of the children's time in school, in primary school, is play? And would you believe that equates to 1.4 years of their time in the school that is often for play? But I feel, and many other schools might feel, that play outside has been undervalued. Play is not separate from learning. When we go into school from the EYFS years right through to year 6, we're developing creativity, we're problem solving, we're developing our emotional intelligence and collaboration and independence. And it supports physical and mental health and even better classroom behaviour. But we're experiencing children are actually having something called play deficit, where we've got over-scheduled things happening, and as I said, screen time and limited outdoor space. So what is Opal Play? Opal Play is a national programme, and it's a 2-year programme, at least 2 years, where it becomes embedded into your school, but it's sustained by you as a school. So you have play leaders, you have play coordinators, play champions, you have children who are play leaders, etc. And it works. Opal actually give you a mentor who's experienced in play, and they work closely with the school to actually put this in place. And what you do, you gather data. So you'll go out, gather data, and you'll find out during the day how many children come to you and say, Miss, can I go to the toilet? Miss, I've fallen down. Miss, I've done this. Or Sir, I've done this, etc. Sir, she won't play with me. He won't play with me. And you gather that data prior to actually Opal Play going into practice. And after that, after you've actually put Opal Play, you'll do that again and you'll see a huge difference, because children don't want to go to the toilet during their playtime because they're so engrossed in this play. They don't want to say, she's not playing with me, because there's a whole range of things to play with, from tires to cardboard boxes to pipes to small world, scooters, music out there in the playground. It's absolutely a brilliant transformation. So over the period of time, you actually follow a program, and I'll just talk about the program itself. The program is an internal audit and a vision. What do you want to achieve from Opal Play? So it looks at your current practices in play and what is good. And like anything, you've got to set yourself goals. Where do you want to be in 18 months and 2 years' time? Then you have some staff training by the Opal Play and the mentor, and a policy. And you get the children involved. What do they want to do in their playtimes? What things do they want to see out? What are the risks of climbing trees? What are the risks of building dens? What are the risks of playing with tires, etc.? And then that takes about 2 to 3 months. And then you have something called playground transformation, is where you actually redesign your play areas. So if you've got a large playing field, you might do a bit of set up like a forest school area. You might set up a tire area. You might set up an area where you do scooters, or you might actually set up just a reading area. So you have redesigned your play areas and what they're called zones, and the children go to different zones in your play area, and they're all filled with materials. But these materials are not things that you have to buy. They're donations. They're donations from the community, donations from building companies, from parents, from carers, everywhere. So these donations, you ask for these donations from parents, all toys, etc., as long as they're not broken and they come into school. And fortunately, you have to buy yourself some storage space or find some storage space to put these things in. And you redesign these, and you invite parents in. You invite parents to have play afternoons with their children so they can see the type of play that these children are getting engaged with. And hopefully that will transform and transfer to outdoor play as well, outside the school. Through 6 to 12 months, you get continuous provision and continuous support from the Opal mentors, and you continuously evaluate your progress to see what you've achieved. But as I said, it's a long-term process. It's not a quick fix, and it takes regular training, regular updates. However, everybody gets involved, from midday supervisors to the head teacher. Myself, you have to be on board, your deputies, your play coordinators, all your staff are called play partners because they all get involved. And what happens, you will see a transformation over a period of time. The children will go out, they will build tires, they will build motor cars, they will build cardboard houses, etc. And you watch from afar. You don't get involved. You don't facilitate. You actually just might give a little bit of direction, because they become immersed and involved in the risks and the benefits. They will say, but the risk of climbing this tree, miss, is that I can see, I might fall, but the benefit is I'm building my upper body strength because I can climb the tree. And they will tell you what the risks and benefits are over a period of time, and that's great to see. And you go out in all weathers. You'll put your wellies on, you'll put your outdoor clothes on. You get those donated as well. And the only thing that might stop you going out is if there's a mighty thunderstorm. But other than that, you're out in all weathers, and it encourages you to go out on the wet days, on the snow days, even if it's raining, put your wellies on and get out on that field, trample in the mud. You have welly racks, so you come back, put your wellies on your welly rack and put your shoes on and go back into the school hall so you don't trample all the mud over. There is a lot of training because the children have to become adversed with the policies and the procedures of how it works. It's not just a free-for-all. It is controlled in a way that they take responsibility. So at the end of the day, they take responsibility for their play, for their risks and benefits, and we take responsibility for the toys and the loose parts that come out, because we have to check that tires don't have spiky parts, or tubes are free of rough edges, etc. And we take responsibility for that. But we work with the children on that, we work with the parents on that, etc. Whilst the challenges, there are only challenges to consider. The weather, as I said, there's no such thing as bad weather in an Opal mindset. Staff are trained, and then it's not control but to play, and everything is addressed through communication. Play assemblies, you have a play assembly once a fortnight to look at things that have happened. So for example, if somebody's playing too rough, or you come back with broken toys, you have a play assembly and you hold up that toy and say, what happened to that toy? Why has that happened? And the children become aware that this is not what this doll is used for, or this scooter is used for. And they become aware that if a toy is broken, it goes in the broken bin. It may not get replaced. So they learn to take care of what as well. So we engage with the parents, we build the community up with the parents as well, and they get involved. So from the top down, right through, all the way through the school, everybody gets involved. So it's an Opal play, outdoor play and learning, helps with mental health, well-being, emotional intelligence, creativity, collaboration, teamwork, everything that gets involved, and it supports their life skills and their social well-being. And there's many success stories. So I've taken one of my schools, my previous headship, through Opal Play, and I can actually say, hand on heart, it changed the way the children were playing, especially at lunchtime. The children want to go out there. They come back in excited at lunchtime to talk about what they've been playing, and they can't wait to get out the next day. Initially, I can say they were overexcited because that's all they were talking about, but that did calm down, and they would tackle things where they came in and we had a quick discussion about what they were doing at break time, and then we got straight on with their learning. So that did settle down. But the wellies, they came in with their wellies, they came in with the outdoor play equipment and clothing, and they worked really hard with the staff in getting everything right. Especially the older children took the responsibility of being play leaders. So that's Opal Play in a nutshell, and I can say it transforms the school culture and it improves the outcomes for children. Not all academic, but definitely socially and emotionally. And that's where we are with Opal Play. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, Susan. That's really interesting to hear how Opal Play works and all the benefits that can come with it. I do have a couple of questions. The first one I have is, can you tell us a bit more about the parents' perspective, and how much involvement parents actually have with Opal Play?
Okay, so the first thing you do, you set off a questionnaire to the parents to ask about play. What is important to them about their children playing at school? And then we send off a letter to say that we're introducing Opal Play and this is what Opal Play is about. And then we invite them in to see our program and have a presentation about what we're going to be doing. And then you start asking for donations, and you have on your committee, you may have a parent who will actually go out on Facebook and say, can I have a donation of prams for the girls, or, just prams? Can I have a donation of soft toys, etc.? And parents will bring them to school or take them to a location. The parents then are involved in an afternoon. They come for an afternoon at the beginning of your journey to see the children in play and actually have an afternoon of play. And then at the end of the journey to see the difference of how we've made with the children. So they're involved in every step of the way. We do tell them that there's risks involved and children might come home muddy, but that's all part of play. And most parents accept that because, they want to see their children enjoy school and be happy at school and want to be part of the community as well.
Great, thank you. I've got one more question. How do you as a school link outdoor play with the more formal type of learning that is more emphasised as children get older?
Right, so the outdoor play, as the children get older, they can go out and they can play with the cardboard boxes, or they can have scooters, or they can play with anything. So, for example, one thing that we did when we were looking at timing, we used the scooters in the school to discuss how long it took a child to go from the top of the bank, only a very small slope, but a slope from the top of the slope to the bottom of the slope. And we took that out in maths, and we said, right, as part of Open Play, you play on these scooters. Now we're going to time them. We're going to see how long it takes you to get from one section to another, etc., and the gradient of the slope. And then we started looking at angles from that as well. So that was one aspect of it. The other aspect of it is when we've done Small World, we've taken Small World out. And we've started talking about when we do creative stories and writing, we take the small world out and we use those characters and figures as a small world to write about. So that's how we've done it.
Okay. Thank you very much for those samples. That's great. Thank you so much, Susan.
Can I just say one more thing?
Of course.
You have to pay for the programme, and the payment of the programme actually can come out of your sports premium budget.
Great. That's really useful to know. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Great. Thank you, Susan. Now we are going to move on to our second speaker, Paul Brennan-Foster.
I'm currently a senior lecturer in primary education at BGU. I have got a presentation that I'm going to be sharing with you. Hopefully you can all see that, just because I have got a lot of photographs to illustrate what we've done. I'm going to be talking a little bit to you about what we do in teacher training and how we show our trainees how you can integrate the curriculum into outdoor learning and the other way around as well. I'm going to start off just sort of telling you a little bit about myself. I do have to keep going back to the old COVID days and saying next slide, please, to change that. So really, outdoor learning. The Institute for Outdoor Learning say that outdoor learning is this umbrella term that's used for these activities and experiences that lead to learning, health and well-being, and environmental awareness. And just remember that health and well-being, because that was something that, again, I'm going to talk to you about some research that I did into approaches and health and well-being. So, next slide. A little bit about my background, a couple of photographs. I trained many, many years ago at the University of Bangor in North Wales, and ended up working with year 2, then year 1, and then reception, and then nursery. So I was, in the eyes of parents, demoted every year, and spent sort of 15, 16 years as nursery teacher. I moved to Derbyshire's biggest infant and nursery school, probably about 16 or so years ago, and sort of became foundation coordinator there. Now, I was that nursery teacher that nobody really liked to be in a classroom near me because I'd got all sorts of things going on outside. It was always very noisy. There was always dancing going on. There was always singing. We had an outdoor karaoke machine that we'd use. But integrating things in, so writing, for example, you can see the picture at the bottom. Now, we do know boys won't sit inside at your writing corner writing. However, if you have a role play garage, they will quite happily be writing on clipboards when they're doing their MOT. So outdoor learning and outdoor play has always been an important part of my practice. So next slide, please. I've not removed sort of timings. So I've taught those different years. I was deputy head of a full service extended school with a children's centre. I've taught Foundation 2 and Foundation 1. I'm the head of Foundation. And that sort of led on to me, be it working with Derby University, Nottingham Trent, being an early years moderator. And I've also done some product development for TTS. So as part of that, the most famous thing is I am the inventor of the Bebot. And I did sort of the on-screen software for it and also the logbox as well. In 2014, we managed to, through our outdoor play, and that was sort of my main area when I was appointed, we got the school to outstanding in 2014, which then led on to me doing a little bit of work as an authority trainer for Derbyshire County Council on out of hours learning, outstanding early years provision and computing. From there, I then moved on secondment to the university for a year before I was sort of offered it full time. And as part of that, I look at outdoor learning as my particular subject area. I was working with a colleague who was due to do forest school training and unfortunately had an accident and couldn't take part in the training. So I agreed, without really realizing how much was involved in it, to take that on. So I became a level 3 practitioner. So if we can move on to the next slide. As part of that training, you set up a company where you do your risk assessments. So Into the Woods Forest School Adventures is my sort of forest school company. And you write all the risk assessments that are associated with tools and fire and go through the principles of forest schools. So we do forest schools at the university and we work with all of the trainees across all the courses, the undergraduates. I've done some sessions as well for secondary trainees as well, thinking about how we can use outdoor learning, particularly within their subject. So all of that sort of happened to feed in at a time when I sort of moved on and started my MA in education. And it came to time for my dissertation. And I thought, well, really, I need to start looking at forest schools and the approach. Because quite a lot of times in school, we do things. Why do we do it? Well, because so-and-so in the next school does it, or somebody I know does it. So I actually wanted to look at forest schools. So those comments earlier about mental health and well-being, and also linking back to what Susan said, I wanted to look at how actually does the forest school approach contribute to children's mental health and well-being? So I'd sort of devised sort of my poster. It's not too clear on that. It was around the time that £6 million worth of funding had been pledged for mental health, and we were going to have all these wonderful schemes going off that didn't actually materialise. But that was my question. So I'd got a local school that were very interested, and having had students on placement there, the head teacher had spoken to me a lot about forest schools, and it was something they wanted to do. So they agreed for me to go and do my research project there. So we'll have a look at what we did. It was a small rural village school in Derbyshire, And we decided that we were going to do the research with the reception children. There were 15 of them. We had access to a woodland that was next to the school grounds, and the head teacher and the class teacher were both eager to introduce forest schools. So what I did is we did a bit of observation. So we looked really at how the children were interacting with the classroom situation, how they participated with learning, how they interacted with each other, their resilience, and the outdoor environment. When it was, we've got access to the outdoor play, what were the children doing? Did all those observations, and then we got the parents involved, because obviously as a research project, I got to get consent from parents along with my ethics form that went in. I held an information meeting where we went through the consent and we completed medical forms. We talked about clothing. We talked about sample activities, and I showed them sort of the tools. So things like the bill hook. We were using fixed blade knives. We might have been using the axes. You can't really see the head of it there. But I asked the parents if they'd got any questions. No questions at all about the activities, about tools, about firelighting. There was just one sort of hand went up, and when I asked and said, what is it that's concerning you? The concern was the children are going to get dirty. And so my response was, well, yeah, they're going to get absolutely filthy. That's why we've got a change of clothing. If it's raining, we'll be outside. Then we might be making mudslides. We might be painting each other's faces with mud. So yeah, the parents had no other concerns about that. So I ran then 6 sessions. 6 sessions for about 2 hours. And we focused on 3 children. But then we looked at sort of general observations. We used the Forest School engagement tool that sort of tracks how children are working in different parts. And it was the class teacher, the TA, and myself that did it. So, next slide, please. In between the sessions, the class teacher and the TA kept a log of any incidents that had happened. We did some more observations of the children. We again looked at their interactions, their resilience, and how they use the outdoor environment. At the end of the 6 weeks, we shared that with parents, the governors, and the trust of the CEO, and also fed back to the children. And the implications of what we found, that I'll talk to you about in a minute, was the school invested quite heavily in the resources. So the class teacher and the TA trained as level 3. And the woodland that was just next door to the school has been donated by that farmer, who just also happened to be one of the school governors that was handy, and he maintains that area. So what did we find out? Well, in general, there was increased attendance on forest school days. Nobody was ever ill. The children, instead of sort of just standing there and not knowing how to interact and play with each other, had started to play alongside other children. And we were seeing sort of this parallel play and then sort of greater team building. There was more resilience and their concentration. And the class teacher actually said the classrooms become a lot calmer. And this was October time. So these new children to reception, many of whom hadn't been in nursery, because the school didn't have a nursery. Many of these children just sort of started to fit in a lot better with the routines of school. Now, in all children, we noticed this increased resilience. And part of that was in the outdoor area, we left activities that the children had done in the forest school session for the children to go and self-access. There was an increased ability in the children to direct their own time. And also all the children's communication and language skills increased. And there was increase in engagement with outdoors, so they wanted to be outside. When I spoke to parents, The parents also said the children wanted to be outside. They were quite happy to go out and play in the garden. They were quite happy to go outside and just get on with things and direct their own time, which is so much of the session. They also noticed that children were telling them a lot about what they'd learned. So if they went for a walk, they'd be identifying trees with them, or they'd be recognizing leaves, things that link back to things that we've done in the session. So that's sort of a little bit about the research that I did. And ultimately, you will probably agree then, yes, my research question, forest school approach does contribute to children's mental health and well-being. And that sort of led into these sessions that we do now in ITE. So we do a taster session in forest schools because we don't have time to do a full sort of 6-week program with them. We do a session where they get the history and the practice, but then we do activities. So we do den building, we do tool work, they'll do firework, they'll do outdoor art, they'll do evaluation. But they also have this self-directed activity, which more often than not on our grounds is them building rope swings and things. And we talk a lot about the risk that's assessed. Now, previous to this, I managed to get some funding from the Royal Horticultural Society, who we looked more wider at outdoor learning. So alongside a forest school session, the trainees were doing sessions with a consultant that came in, and they were looking at gardening. So they looked at the plotting a pot. They looked at spaces around our university campus and how we could use them, which led then into writing the risk assessments for them and recognising hazards. We linked to curriculum areas. So we looked at science, and they were planting beans of how to fulfill part of that curriculum. We linked it to history, and they built sort of Egyptian gardens. But they were also learning skills, so they made herb gardens, because quite a lot of the trainees hadn't planted things like shrubs or herbs or bulbs. Bulbs was quite enlightening, that they didn't realise that bulbs have to be planted a particular way around. We also then looked at how we could integrate this outdoor learning to other modules across courses. So our next slide is outdoor storytelling. And we do this with our Year 1 BA primary education students. This is one session, and take them out. We look at a range of literature, a range of stories, how we can use the outdoor environment to support that storytelling, with activities, and they come up with ideas. We also then moved on to art and outdoor art. And obviously for this, we included the work of Andy Goldsworthy and James Brunt. So we looked at what those artists did. And then as part of the session, I sent the trainees out and said, okay, you need to go out, you need to produce a piece of artwork, take a photo of it, and then we're going to post it at that time to Padlet. So they all did that in their groups, and these are just some examples of the work that they did that was inspired by those artists. And we talked about how, we can translate that and we can do that within school. And in fact, yesterday, I was out visiting a student on placement, and she was doing Andy Goldsworthy with reception. So we were able to talk through some of the ideas that she was doing. She's planned a whole sequence of work around that for those children. So one of the other things that I've done, or that I've been involved with, I was asked to take part in a community of practice. So funnily enough, we've met this morning. So this is a group of people who share a passion for something. And we meet, we chat, and our community of practice is on outdoor learning. We can move on to the next slide. And this was established by Avril Rowley at Liverpool John Moores University back in January. And so far there are 18 institutions that are all ITE providers, and we use it for sharing ideas, finding out what's happening, a knowledge exchange. We've spoken this morning about some joint research projects and maybe some co-authored publications. So our next slide. These are sort of the institutions that are taking place. And our meetings are quite regular. At the moment, we're holding them sort of once a month. And then normally about 2 hours. And in that, one of us will sort of update the rest of the group on what happens in our institution. And then for the second part, we'll have a bit of a free discussion. And it's interesting to find out what other providers are doing and how their trainees are integrating outdoor learning into their practice. So if we can move on to the next slide. So I'm galloping through this. So we've got our a Teams area where we're sharing things. We're sharing, planning and CCF mapping, schemes that people have come up with, any research that people have done, and sort of activity resources. One of the discussions as well that we talked about, if we can move on to the next slide, is what we want to do. So we're considering the impact of outdoor learning. And we've come up with this idea that it's based on perception and effects, and we've called it the 4 Ps. So we're looking at the effect on pupils, on parents, on practitioners, and on the public. So we're looking at what the impact is on children, on their attainment. We're looking at what current perceptions are. What do teachers think about outdoor education? One of the things that particularly that I'm interested in looking at is this idea of risky play that I'm hoping to take into sort of my Ed D area, looking at parental and practitioner perspectives on risky play. We're also looking at the bigger picture. So yes, forest schools is very prescriptive, and I'm a big advocate of it, but there are other things that we can do. Forest schools is not the end of where everything has to end. So we're looking at sort of wider perspectives and bigger pictures. There is a forest school that's near me, that's in the community, that's for adults, but it's a community garden and they run forest schools as part of that. Now that's also used by their local GP for socially prescribing. So if somebody goes, for example, with anxiety or stress, the GP will sign them up to probably a 6-week program over at the forest school, where they'll take part in gardening and forest schools and look at mental health and well-being. So again, that's something that we're looking at and ways that we can change. So my last slide that I'm going to finish you with is a video clip that's embedded into the last slide. Sorry, James. This is graduation.
Solid friendships during an outdoor learning session, working together to build shelter, whittle wood, and light a fire. As dangerous as this sounds, this was actually a university session.
And at that point at graduation, everybody's heads on the platform turned and looked at me. It has had a big impact on our students, and we hear quite a lot about the impact of that. So in our trainee voice, it's really important to us in our session feedback and module evaluations. The group rep feedback. The National Student Survey it's been in, it was there at graduation. And things that they mention are things like mental health and well-being. It was their most memorable session. They really liked a no-pressured approach. Thinking and linking back again to what Susan said earlier, that trainee anxiety around going outdoors. I mean, in my day, I live in a really small sort of village in Derbyshire. It was disappear in the summer holidays. You go home when the street lights come on or when you're hungry. Students don't really experience that anymore. So they have this anxiety, and they are really enjoying it when they get engaged with it. So a couple of the comments, the best session we've had so far. We need to do this every week, which would be lovely if they could. We haven't got the time. And yet we see that. I thought it was just playing, but we actually get to understand the approach. So really, that's sort of a quick gallop through sort of bits that I've done and what the situation is and what happens at BG. So if you've got any questions at all that you want to ask, or anything after the session that you think about, then you can from BGU's website, you'll be able to find my email address. More than welcome just to email me and ask any questions. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you very much, Paul. Really interesting to hear the positives of your research, the impact it's had on the children, and then also on the ITE groups, all of those students. Really good feedback. We've got time for a quick question. So how did you determine a baseline for resilience for each child and then measure or quantify any improvement in their resilience? So in your research?
In that, we used a lot. It was a while ago. It was when we sort of had the baseline assessments in school, and we looked at sort of that. What would start off would be children just sort of stood there when something went wrong, or they would just move on from one activity to another, and it was mainly sort of observational that we noticed that it wasn't something we were specifically looking at. It was something that sort of popped up once we'd started that first lot of observations. Those children aren't really engaging in an activity. They're just going from table to table to table. But obviously, as we went on and they wanted to do things out in the forest school session. So they wanted to take part in things like Hamper Zone, where they're doing art with hammers and putting cotton over the top of a leaf and bashing it to get the dye coming out. Obviously, that needs some resilience to do that. We saw that translated to the classroom environment, to the sort of the formal classroom environment. So that was really it was more observational that we noticed that.
Okay, great. Yeah, that's really useful. Thank you. Well, thank you very much, Paul, for sharing with us today.
Thank you.
And now we will move on to our final speaker, David Gibbons.
So I'm David Gibbons. I'm head teacher at Nethlam Church of England Aided Junior School. I'm also acting head teacher at the moment at Nethlam Infant and Nursery School. I've been acting head teacher at a number of other schools as well over my career. Being a head for, goodness me, 27 years. But I've been here at what we'll call the junior school in Nethlam for the last 21. So I'm going to talk about Key Stage 2 and outdoor spaces. And I wondered about this, and I thought the best way for me to do this is to take you on a little tour of the school, first of all, and I'll show you what we have. We are blessed. We are really blessed in terms of grounds. So last night I took my phone, put the camera on, and I went for a little walk. So I'm going to talk you through the grounds, first of all, and some of the things that we've done. Okay? So hopefully I would share this with you. Okay. Here it comes. Okay. So I'll just get rid of me because you don't want to be looking at me. Let's have a look at that. So as we go through, here is our polytunnel, which we put up just before COVID. I mean, part of what I'm going to talk about is how to do this for no money. Okay. So this polytunnel went up after we put a bid in for a grant in terms of a gardening grant, and we were told we put a bid in for tools, and we were told that the bid wasn't enough. Okay, so we put in 20 minutes we had to meet the deadline, and so we put in a bid for this, and actually got the full amount for it. I'm very lucky that our staff put this together. We built it ourselves, okay? And so this came for free, in effect, through a grant, and we put this through. And we've used this for a lot of things, okay? So we'll just have a look inside, okay, as we walk around. So at the moment in there, you can see that there's the children involved with this. So inside there, we've been bringing on lots of wildflowers. I'll talk about those in a second. But currently at the moment, you can see in the central beds, there are courgettes and peas and carrots in there. Okay. We use it for a range of things. You see, there's the peas, so it'll soon be ready to eat. Okay. Outside as well, we develop growing beds. This is all, it's about staff and pupil buy-in. Okay. So these are all created by the staff and they're created by the pupils. So at the moment, we're mulching those down. You can see I think some potatoes and some rhubarb in there that the children have put in. So we've got the polytunnel, we've got the growing beds as well as we grow on with that. You'll see as well, there's always strawberries, okay? And obviously storage and so on. Again, these have all been donated from the community, okay? We do compost as well. So composting, there's some of our composting bins. We get the children involved in composting. It makes a great job in terms of leaves. It's great activities. The composting then goes through onto the different beds that we have within school. There's part of the school field. You can see it's a big space. I'm going to have a look up there in a second. All of that woodland is on site, okay? We're not a forest school. I mean, Paul did mention that it can be quite prescriptive, and our approach has been to find our own way with it. Doesn't mean that we're not involved with forest school movement, and we are a site for forest school first aid training, okay? That happens on site. Okay, so you can see there's big space, okay? Just pointing back as well in terms of outdoor, what we do have, again, we got this. That's just part of an 8 kilowatt solar farm that's on the school roof. Okay. We were re-roofed in 2012, and it was my insistence that whatever roofing solution that we were given by the architects and the builders had to have some sustainability within it in terms of a solar farm. We don't make a big deal of it, but that's another thing that we demonstrate. If you talk about learning, outdoor learning for the children, it's there for them all the time. It's normalized. Okay. So what we do with all of this is to normalize it. We don't fly a flag about it. It's just part of normal everyday practice. Okay. You'll see within there, we do have trim trails and so on, as all schools do. But because of the size of our site, I mean, that's quite a big trim trail, but it's dwarfed by what else we have. Okay. Right, okay, den building. This is quite interesting in terms of the site. We'll come in a while to an outdoor one of our outdoor classrooms, which is made from pallets and tyres. What we noticed over the last 2 years is across the whole field, children started really to get into den building, okay? And actually the outdoor classroom started being dismantled when we weren't looking. Okay, the children would steal the pallets, they'd steal the tires, and they'd actually fall out with each other over this, and it wasn't problematic. It was just an issue. So what we've created this year, which works really well, you just have 2 sites of those, is a den building space. So this is playtimes. I mean, I really like what Sue said. We don't get involved in this. And to quote her, she said the children get immersed in the risks and the benefits, and this is one element of it. So we create the den building area, we put the resources in there, and then the children manage it. And the only rule is that they're dismantled at the end of every week, and then they go again. Okay, so it's quite a big space there, and there's lots of positivity in terms of what happens there. Okay, there we go. Right next to the graveyard as well. I'm not quite sure what we're learning there, but we understand mortality. Okay, you've got a view down from the top of the field there, you're starting to see, back to where the school is, if you can get some idea of that. This is our outdoor classroom. You'll notice a few of the tyres are missing. We created this with children. We cleared this space right at the top of the school field, and this was initially came from a period of time in around 2018, 2019, where we had a really hot summer, and our school council identified that they didn't want to sit in their classrooms anymore. Okay, they wanted all their formal learning as much as possible to be outside. So they designed it, they did the work, we went out, and it's good to hear Paul saying that as well. I fully agree with that. People will step forwards, okay? So the local community came in and we built it together. Okay, so this is just part of it. It's shaded completely. There's no need for canopies or anything. And that comes from the pupils wanted it. The pupils built it. The pupils developed it. We've developed, a fire pit and bug hotels. You can see all of that in there. We'll talk about the fire pit in a bit in terms of what the children think of that. Okay. You'll notice as well, we've got a big site, and the children, we allow them within parts of the woodland, unsupervised throughout their playtimes, and they create that by human traffic, as it were. They create these green lanes, we'll call them green corridors, and so this is quite a common site around there, around the site. Okay, but that we've not interfered with that. We've just let them take its course. Part of another area of the school, we've taken donations over the years for fruit trees, and so we've developed an orchard now, which we use as part of in DT and cooking and so on. We harvest the fruits. We've got another outdoor classroom that we built in the woodland, and we have our grounds people just manicure it a little bit. There's a lot of wild space within the school grounds, but we do manicure this, you can see here, just to give roots down into it. And just a site here, that's part of within that, we call this a gazebo now. That was a project that we did a few years ago with a local artist, and there was a lot of elements to it, but part of it was they did some work on Jacob's Ladder, which is a William Blake painting. And the challenge for the children to place in here was, if you were at the top of Jacob's Ladder and you met God, what would you say to God, and what would God say to you? Okay. And then they're placed around the outdoor site. You'll see quite a few of these, and then they just stay. In terms of a place of reflection and a quiet space for children, it's amazing. Oh yeah, we have an air raid shelter, okay, an underground bunker. This was built some years ago, which we use. We've recently celebrated VE Day, Mark VE Day, and it's used very well. This actually came from some work that our staff did. They wanted to just do a simple shelter. We worked with a parent who had a ground working company. They were going to just dig the hole for us, but his guys said, we were bored of digging holes. And so they went off to the Air Museum and looked at the plans and designs for these Anderson shelters. And they said, we want to do the whole thing for you. So it is tanked and lined out and so on. So it's an underground bunker that the community provided for us. It's normally good. Okay. It can provide, should we say, a refuge in the evenings if some of our teenagers get on site for them to do their own outdoor learning. But then we pick up the drink cans and the rest of it afterwards. But normally it's very positive, and there's a lock on there. Okay. So here's the woodland, which we in the past we've had community days to clear the woodland. We've had community days to raise the bottom canopy so we can see into it. At the moment, we leave it to go quite wild. Okay. Children going there with their staff in terms of art lessons, science lessons, RE lessons. They spend time in there. You can see there's some animal nesting boxes and so on in there. We do have some snakes in there. Okay. We're fine with those. We do have sparrowhawks at the moment that are nesting in the trees there, which are quite amazing, unless you're a pigeon. But we pick those up, or the foxes come and pick those up, and children learn from that. And that's the view back down from the woodland. Finally, I am nearly there. That's the most recent project that we've had. This is the back of the polytunnel. We celebrated VE Day with a lot of activities outside. And one of the activities was we're creating a wildflower meadow. Now, all of the wildflowers, you can start to see them coming through. They were planted last month. They were all germinated and grown from seed in the polytunnel with some research. And actually the member of staff that led that, actually I learned something there, is actually during the Second World War, it's learning time, everybody, 40% of the wildflower meadows in the UK were lost. And that was obviously because they were turned over to agriculture. Okay. So that was a great little bit of learning there. So we're putting a little bit of wildflower meadow back there in response to that. Not everything lasts forever, which is what we learn from our outdoor space. So here's something that we did outside, and this was some work we did with the Royal Institute of British Architects. We were looking at democratic spaces, and the children designed small models of democratic speaking spaces. And then the winner, the RIBA came up from London, and they said, we'll build it for you. Now, that was until very recently lined with plywood, with curved plywood, and it's an amazing is an amazing platform, because once you stand on it, sound travels. You can stand and face the dome and sound will travel 100 meters. And that's from some year 6 children who designed that as part of a democratic speaking place. And of course, what we learn from the outside is everything decays. And that's exactly what's just happened to the plywood. So we're just looking to replace that. Okay. But, we learn from that. We've got some quiet spaces. I will just whiz on that we're just working at the moment. You can see the quieter you become, the more you can hear, is what's being developed in there at the moment. We've got other quiet spaces and other growing beds there. Okay. Outdoor as well, we've done some work on recycling, reusing these. This is some bottle top art that we've done with the children, which sits on the outside of the school. You'll see also outside the front of the school, we've developed that. We are a Church of England school. And if I just jump to, if you put those two pieces together, that's actually the sign of the fish there. We don't believe in being in your face. It's a subtle use of outside. Okay. And the final space is right at the front of the school, where a local community group said, we want to guerrilla garden. Have you got any space? And so we leave that to the local community, and whatever they want to do in there, they just come and do. Okay. So I'm going to just stop sharing that there, and you'll get me back for a second. Okay. Not long. I'll just give you a really quick rundown. We have, the space is great, and we keep creating spaces. One of the most important things that we've done is to link it to the curriculum. Okay, there's a lot of play space, there's a lot of exploration space, but I'm really keen. Say, for example, today I went around school with my chair of governors, and we only found 2 classes inside. Everyone else was outside. And the point is, be prepared and be ready to take whatever formal learning you're doing inside, outside, and we've got the spaces for it. And one of the ways to do that, rather than mandate it, is we share good practice all the time. And for example, most recent staff meeting, when we looked at this, there were lots of areas in terms of what worked. People bring what works for them. Obviously, already Paul's mentioned Andy Goldsworthy. We've done a lot of work outside with regard to him. We've worked with RE, for example, had a great project creating the Stations of the Cross, which is a really challenging idea. But we've created those in the grounds of the local church using just found materials. We've done a lot of filmmaking outside. One member of staff has recreated the wedding of Cana and the loaves and the fish story outside. There's examples with maths. How do you measure a tree? You can measure a tree, and using formula and estimation there, ranging to story reading, bug hotels, poetry stimulus. So one great activity, and I'd recommend this one, it's a good 3-hour activity with years 6s downwards, is create a theme park for an ant. Okay, that's the task. Create a theme park for an ant. We've done sound collector poems. Another wonderful around my beautiful world with RE is it's about stillness, it's about reflection, it's about meditation, it's about noticing. Is just to give them a Dulux colour card, the really complicated one, and say find every colour on the colour card in nature. And children can do that. And I think adults should do that far more often. And to be honest with you, my time's up, I'm afraid. I could talk for hours and hours about it. But the final thing, I spoke to some children yesterday, because that's the most important thing. If Ofsted visitors and as educators, we're most interested in which knowledge and which experience is sticking. Okay. So in terms of them, here's a quick list. I said, tell me the things you remember from learning outside. First of all, they said, actually, playing football, building dens and playing bulldog. Okay. I said, well, let's nudge on a little bit with this one. They talked about measuring the playground, walking with a trundle wheel, the fire pit, storytelling with marshmallows. They talked about apple crumble, picking apples, cooking, testing the catapults, sketching trees, rock painting. They've made bread outside. They talked about planting and growing plants. Cooking with nettles and wild garlic, and that's a big one for me because we've got a lot of nettles and a lot of wild garlic in our grounds. So the season's just come to an end, but we make sure we cook with them where they're there. They talked about the VE Day activities where they played wildflower outside. They planted, they played wartime games. They talked about working in the air raid shelter. They talked about filmmaking, which we do a lot of outside. They talked about stories with marshmallows, again, Greek mythology, more poetry around the fire pit, more marshmallows, okay? Lots of maths work, drawing angles, measuring shadows. just sitting out there and learning, and on and on and on. I won't do them all, but we model good practice, we share good practice, we allow the children and the staff to own the outdoor space. Okay, that's the key to it for us. And so, yeah, that's us. But come and visit us. It's lovely. Okay.
Great. Thank you very much, David. The facilities look amazing. As Sean said in the comments, I wish I could be a student at your school. Yeah, it looks incredible. And all the pictures really help actually visualize what this could look like if, we wanted to try and implement something similar. I do have one quick question for you. Can you share examples of how outdoor learning has supported inclusion, particularly for students with SEND or students that struggle in a conventional classroom?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in terms of what we got there, let's talk about children, because we do here take children who've been permanently excluded from other schools, which is always a challenge. And so, they're on their last chance. Okay. So we do work with quite flexible timetables. So I can talk about some of those. The gardening space. And actually, sharp tools aren't for all children. I'll say that. I've learned that. But the gardening space does give just the time for them to just slow down and reflect. Okay. And to regulate. Okay. So with some children, it's about regulation. Some children, it's about real focus. Okay. And I'll give one more example of a child with an EHCP who was with us a lot during lockdown. And he was working with me a lot in the polytunnel. We spent a lot of time in the polytunnel growing things from seed. And actually, it became really, really, really obvious very quickly for a child who struggled with all elements of an academic curriculum that he was a horticultural genius. Okay. It was his thing, and he could recognize any plants. And if green fingers is actually a thing, he had it. So he thrived, so for him in terms of inclusion, everyone made a big deal of him because they're all in awe of him. Okay. So yeah, that's just a small example. I could give you 100.
Excellent. Okay. That's brilliant. Thank you very much, David. Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you, David. Thank you, Susan and Paul as well for your contributions. It's been a pleasure to hear how outdoor learning is being embedded in so many different settings. And thank you everyone for joining us this afternoon. Thank you for your questions. We hope this session has given you some ideas, some inspiration, and some takeaways to reflect on in your own context. Before we finish up for today, a quick reminder to save the date, as our third event will be on the 1st of July, same time as usual. This time we will focus on leadership in education. So thank you again, and we look forward to seeing you at the next event. Have a great evening.